Yes, sir. So we're just going to do the oath of offices first.
Okay.
We'll call each individual over here to the front.
All right.
Yes, sir. I guess we do have to. No, ma'am. So you put your hand on the Bible. So it's I, Barbara Gray Campbell.
I, Barbara Gray Campbell.
Do hereby certify that I have received. Sorry. Yes, we're going to start again. I, Barbara Gray Campbell.
I, Barbara Gray Campbell.
Having been elected to the office of
Having been elected to the office of
Municipal Judge
Municipal Judge
in the City of Lovington,
in the City of Lovington,
State of New Mexico,
State of New Mexico,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the laws of the State of New Mexico,
the laws of the State of New Mexico,
and will faithfully and impartially
and will faithfully and
impartially
impartially
discharge the duties of the said office
discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, ma'am. Congratulations. Mr. Bernard Butcher.
I tell people my dad was Mr. Butcher, I'm Bernard. Don't say I do.
I, Bernard Butcher,
I, Bernard Butcher,
having been elected office of the City Commissioner,
have been elected office of City Commissioner,
District 3,
District 3,
in the City of Lovington,
in the City of Lovington,
State of New Mexico,
State of New Mexico,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States,
of the United States,
the constitutions and the laws of the State of New Mexico,
the Constitution of the
And
laws
the
of the State of New Mexico,
and will faithfully and impartially
and will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of said office
of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, sir.
Amen.
Congratulations. Mr. Paul Campos.
Congratulations. Nice.
I, Paul Campos,
I, Paul Campos,
having been elected to the office
having been elected to the office
of the City Commissioner,
of the City Commission,
District 5,
District 5,
in the City of Lovington,
in the City of Lovington,
State of New Mexico,
State of New Mexico,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and the laws of the State of New Mexico,
the Constitution and the laws of the State of New Mexico,
and will faithfully and impartially
and will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of said office
discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. All right, very good. Congratulations, fellow commissioner. So, thank you. We'll go on into reorganization of commission. We have a kind of a standing gentleman's agreement to reorganize. And before we go into that, I would just like to say thank you to my fellow commissioners for allowing me to sit in the mayoral seat for these last 2 years. They've been wonderful. I've really enjoyed them. And I just ask for your continued prayers, and I will continue to serve in whatever capacity that I can. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. So we'll open up the floor for discussion.
I'd like to say something.
Yes,
I'd
sir.
like to thank you for your service. You've been a great mayor. I think Scott has been a great mayor. So those of you who've been mayors, I really appreciate your efforts, and you brought us forth up to this point. And I wish I could vote for all of you as mayor. And in fact, I wish I couldn't vote. I said I didn't vote, so I wouldn't have to upset anybody.
Right.
Can I abstain?
No.
I appreciate those words, Commissioner, and I agree. Everybody's deserving of it, and so. But we're going to continue on. We're going to do a great job, no matter who sits here. That's what makes us great.
We'll back whoever's in front.
Absolutely. All right. With that being said, anybody else wish to discuss? We'll open up the floor for discussion or nominations.
I make a motion to elect Commissioner Trujillo as mayor.
All right. Do we have a second?
I second it.
All right. We have a second. Any other discussion?
No.
All right. Okay. All right.
Wait. You want this? This one's good. No, you're busy, so I didn't have a chance to ask.
Any other discussion before we go on? No. All right. Roll call. Ms. Juarez?
Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Butcher?
Yes.
Commissioner Gandy?
No.
Commissioner Trujillo?
Yes.
And Commissioner Campos?
Well, I'm still mayor until now. You can say mayor?
Mayor Campos?
Yes. Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you once again. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so we'll switch. Take the gavel.
Nomination for mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, we'll take nominations for Mayor Pro Tem.
I'd like to nominate Bernard Butcher as Mayor Pro Tem.
Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please. Ms. Anna?
Commissioner Gandy?
Aye.
Sorry. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Butcher?
Yes.
Commissioner Campos?
Yes.
And Mayor Trujillo?
Yes.
No, you got it right. Okay, so I'll pass the gavel on to you, Mayor. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Take the hot seat. What's that?
Switch computers.
Yeah.
Well, password don't work.
Yeah.
Which water?
Take that one. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's my left hand. All right, we'll go ahead and proceed with the meeting. Let's, do I have a motion to, no, let's start with, I'm sorry. Oh, no, I think we switched.
No, the paper.
Oh, paper.
Thank you.
Let's go with roll calling.
Okay. Commissioner Gandy?
Here.
Commissioner Sanchez?
Here.
Commissioner Butcher?
Here.
Commissioner Campos?
Here.
And Mayor Trujillo?
Here. Who's up for the agenda? It's not shown on the agenda. Who's up for the
Oh,
agenda?
Commissioner Gandy.
Commissioner Gandy would lead us in prayer and pledge.
Will you stand and pray with me, please? Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just come to you tonight. Lord, as we have new leadership, Lord, I just pray that you would bless Commissioner Trujillo and each commissioner here, Mayor Trujillo, and each commissioner here with your wisdom and your foresight for this community. Lord, I just pray that we would lead this community in a positive direction. that would be a blessing to our citizens and bring you great joy. Lord, I just pray for your blessings upon our staff. I pray for rain. Lord, we need rain. Lord, I just pray for those that are unwilling to take care of themselves, that as citizens of this community, we would step up and tend to those that need our help, whether it be a hand, whether it be food, whether it be just a kind word. Lord, I just pray that each citizen in this community would take great pride in their community and those around them. Again, Lord, we thank you for our staff, for our police department, for our fire department. Lord, I just pray that you would watch over them and protect them in difficult situations. Lord, give them the wisdom to make the right decisions in every situation. Again, Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity to serve you as commissioners in this wonderful city of Lovington that you blessed us with. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, that is the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Do I have a motion to accept the agenda as submitted?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving forward. Do I have a motion to consider the regular meetings of February 26, 2018?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner and staff report, Wyatt?
I'd just like to give you a brief update. I know the lights at Main and B have been out since Thursday of last week, and just got off the phone with Bobby, which is the maintenance man for New Mexico DOT, and they said they're leaving Albuquerque and should be here tomorrow afternoon to fix the lights that are on Main and Washington and Main and Central. So other than that, we're just moving forward on our 17th Street project. Got curb and gutter down on west in the drainage portion of it on 17th, with east and west side, and moving forward with the sidewalk on those portions before they move on with any more base or anything. That's moving forward on the Lovington, Washington. Got everything taken out, and they're supposed to be getting it surveyed. The end of last week, beginning of this week, to start curb and gutter and all the concrete work to move forward on that project.
Okay. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I might have missed it. What was the problem with the lights initially?
Actually, from what I heard, is that a 18-wheeler was towing another 18-wheeler down, and they took him out, and I guess drove off. I'm not exactly. I got a phone call probably about an hour afterwards from Bernardo, just saying he put up temporaries and got them flashing. I had actually Greg Evans with New Mexico DOT Tatum give me a call and let me know. We do have an agreement with DOT for Main and D and 9th and D for the maintenance and upkeep, but we do not have anything for the lights in the downtown area. So they were just checking the agreements and everything. That's what I believe took the length of time.
Okay, all right, thank you. No idea who might have caused that damage?
I do not know, sir.
Gary?
But Mayor and Commission, we've been working on our budget, and we're working on our schedule, and we're anticipating probably mid-April being able to present a budget to you as the City Commission for your approval. And that's all I have to report.
Any questions?
All of our computer software is up to snuff and running and doing us justice now.
Hey, it's not 100%, but it's getting a whole lot better now.
You have any idea when that'll really be complete?
My goal is no later than June 30th.
That's good.
For the new fiscal year.
Yeah, before the new fiscal year.
Gary, how's the communication going back and forth between us and them?
Oh, the Tyler community? It's actually
Communication.
good. The communication? It's actually been going well. One of the things I can say about the Tyler company is that their support group is very responsive and patient with us. So when we have something that we really need to work on, not only can we address the issue that we've called them on, but if we remember something else, they are patient and take the time to work with us. And if they, as an individual, the person we're speaking with, is not capable, they are good about getting me in contact with somebody else who can. And I'm very appreciative of that.
So they're not charging us anymore for upgrades at this point?
As far as upgrades are concerned, I believe we're finished with that part of the process. We're more in the work in progress as far as working out any little bugs that they have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Administrative Assistant? Laura?
Nothing to report, sir. Nothing
Anything
to
to-
report, sir. at this
Thank
time.
you. Arthur?
I have
Commissioner
nothing.
Santos?
I'm okay.
Commissioner Butcher?
Yeah, I guess this one will address James. I was just kind of curious, James, you know, on our reports from the public online, I forget what you even call it now. I looked at that a while ago before I came in. But anyway, you know, where we have complaints or praises on that, what kind of status are we looking like as far as the upbeat of the public on getting stuff done or how we're handling it?
It had been a month up until today that somebody actually had submitted anything through Lovington Cares. And that was just to advise us of a street light that was out. So, and prior to that, we maybe get 2 or 3 a month.
Just 2 or 3 hits
That's
a
it,
month on
yes, sir.
that. Well, I figured, you know, people would, you know, really be concerned, you know, they would kind
Yes,
of
sir.
write in, type it in, give us heads up, you know. But thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
I was just kind of curious how it was going. Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay. James, I would like to break up just one issue, and that would be really not an issue. I just will see if you can get us some data on some market rate with our executive staff here with the City of Lovington, as well as our commissioners on pay rate. Pretty much what it compares to other municipalities our size. I want to make sure that executive staff are pretty much up to par with it, just to see if commissioners agree on any type of merit or anything that may move on that. I'd like to get on our next meeting, please. And that includes the judge if she's still here. I think she's already gone. Yeah, she includes the judge as well. I think the city that I know of, it's been 14 plus years that the judge or anybody has ever received a raise or anything. So just looking into to see what's out there,
Sure.
and if the commissioners agree. Thank you, Mr. Collins.
I'm going to put the Chiefs on the spot here. I'll give you that look. So how are we doing position-wise, personnel-wise, guys? How many openings do we have? What are we looking at in the near future? Chief?
We currently have 2 positions available, and hopefully by next month we'll start doing interviews and stuff like that. So.
Good. That's not bad. 2 positions. Chief?
We currently only have 1 position that just recently was vacated, so we're still receiving. I know we ran the ad this last week, so we've only received a couple applications, but right now we just got the 1 position.
It's pretty good. All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gann?
The only thing I have is I'm excited to see 17th completed, because when you look behind the Lovington Inn where they knocked down all that brush and shrubbery and they got the concrete, you can just envision what it's going to look like, and it's kind of exciting to see something other than trash and mesquite bushes and everything else. I know it's been a long time for the repairs, but I think it's going to be well worth it. And then I spoke with James about one of the stoplights and a street light on Avenue D and 17th. That one light won't stay on for the stop signs when you come into town. Other than that, I don't have anything.
Yeah, that is a hazard at night, especially if you're not familiar with the city.
Right.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Chief David?
Nothing to report, sir.
Chief
Start us off.
Nothing to report, sir.
My tongue is tied today. I think it's my tie is tight. That's what it is. Let's blame it on the tie.
It's not the tie. It's not the tie. It's a seat, brother. Let me tell you.
James?
I have nothing. Maybe name tags for everyone.
I'm gonna have to start with name tags and stuff.
Yeah, I have nothing, sir.
Thank you. Patrick?
I have nothing for you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I apologize. Okay, let's go ahead and go on to non-action items. James? Public comment, excuse me. Anybody like to say, public, have anything to say tonight?
We have one.
Hello, I'm Evelyn Hoguin with the Lovington ADC. Would like to invite everyone out to our job fair on Saturday. We have 15 companies that have signed up to participate. There's a variety of positions open for men and women. We'll have both hospitals, the police department from Hobbs, the detention center, Lee County, the city of Lovington, the theater. I mean, we have a lot of variety for all ages, like I mentioned, men and women. But it will be on Thursday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Troy Harris Center. We will have a live remote starting at 9 a.m. through till 11 with radio stations. So would like to invite anyone that's, I hope no one's looking for a job in this. But if you know someone that's looking for a job, please send them our way. Like I said, we have a lot of good potential open positions.
That's great.
Thank you.
So, Chiefs, are y'all going to be there?
Yes.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
Just curious.
Thank you, Evelyn.
It's Saturday, not, she said I said Thursday, but it's Saturday.
You did say Thursday.
Did I say Thursday?
Yes, you did.
Sorry, this time change is not good for me, but it's Saturday, 9 a.m., 2 p.m. at the Troy Harris Center.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Good afternoon, City Commissioners and Mayor. I just wanted to remind everyone that we are doing our first Love Lovington shopping campaign, and that's going to be a quarterly thing where we're going to highlight a couple of businesses from the downtown area. This one is going to be Lazy Six and One Way. This will be Friday. If you mention Love Lovington at either one of those locations, you will either get free chips and salsa or you'll get 50% off of Wildcat gear at One Way. So, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Dave Rouser. Most of you know me. I just have a story I want to tell you. Heard Tim Tebow hit his first single, went over first base. They got it in the outfield, threw it into the first baseman. Because Tim Tebow is so quick, he hit the first baseman, picked up the ball, ran back to home, spiked it, and yelled touchdown. The worst part was that the Major League Baseball Commission decided to go ahead and give him the point and let their team win as a result. Now, the reason for this statement is this. I understand what we're doing with the city ordinances concerning carports. And we have a lot of people who have abided by the city ordinances and installed carports according to regulations. Unfortunately, we are changing our regulations to accommodate those people who aren't doing it. And we're basically doing the same thing that Major League Baseball did. We're penalizing the people that played by the rules in favor of the people who don't. And I understand why we're doing what we're doing. I just want to let you know I don't agree with it. I think we're treating the people that have played fairly unfairly. And I think we should do something about that. And so when you're making your decisions, just like you remember that little baseball story.
Appreciate it. And one thing to mention too on boards, that's why I always appreciate seeing diverse boards. No one ever agrees with one another, but accumulation of all heads together always ends up making a good decision. So you're always going to have that one or two that disagree. Maybe all five will disagree. But the good thing about it for the community as well as here as our board, we may not all agree as one, but that's what always makes a good board. Because if everybody's always just nodding their head yes, I guarantee you it's going to lead us to problems. So it's always good when you have a negative or a positive mixed together, you end up a solid positive. So I appreciate that, Dave. Thank you, sir. Moving forward to non-action items, James?
Yes, sir. All right, so our first item is the Novus agenda system that we just implemented, hence the new laptops that you have in front of you. So just some basics on how those laptops operate. There is a power button. It's located in the upper right-hand corner. It has a standard power button. To turn those units off, you just hold that down for about 5 seconds and the unit will power down. These laptops will stay here so that our various boards and commissions can use them. In order to log in, the nice thing about this is a Chromebook. It's basically an internet-based PC. If you have a Gmail account, and this goes for any of our board members, you can actually log into this computer through your Gmail account. We provided each one of the commissioners a Gmail account. It has the Lovington.org. So it's your district and then your number at Lovington.org. That's how you sign in. You have access to create documents such as Word or Excel or Word or Excel type documents. Save those. You can check your email. The nice thing is that since you have this account, you can log into any computer and still see any of those emails, any of those documents that you generated. If for some reason you do forget what your username and password is, you can always log in as a guest. So whenever you first open up the laptop, it looks very basic. And so the two icons of note are this little multicolored circle down at the bottom. That is your internet browser. So to log into the Novus Agenda system, you'll click on that. It will open up a web page. Your laptop should actually be set defaulted to log in automatically to what we call Board Web. To check your email, you just simply click on the M button down there, and it will bring up your email. So whenever you first log in, if it doesn't pull it up, we've bookmarked not only the city web page, but also Novus Agenda. So if you'll give me just a second to switch applications here. And this is also for the public. So this is our agenda, kind of an automated system now, makes things as far as agendas and meeting packets a lot easier to utilize. We've changed the layout of our website. If you look at meetings and agendas, this actually shows all of our commission board meetings that are scheduled right now that actually have agendas that have been finalized and posted. Our meeting schedule is actually still listed under our elected officials, and then where I don't remember exactly where it was. We do have that resolution on there. But also for all of our previous packets that we have digitized, you can actually search them. They did not import into this system. So you can actually view your agendas one of two ways. For the public, they will do this. They'll pull this up, and if they want to see tonight's agenda, they can either look at it online or download the whole thing as a PDF. It still works the same. So if we downloaded this agenda for tonight, the nice thing is that you don't have to search through pages and pages just to get to one agenda item now. If it's highlighted in blue, this means that we actually have an agenda packet for it. So, for instance, our canvassing of results, if you wanted to see that information there, it will take you to the staff summary sheet, as well as any attachments that you have. It'll download those attachments. You pull those up. It's going to do it for me here. I'm sorry. This is a little bit different since this is a different computer, but then you can pull up the attachment, okay? And then to get back to your agenda, basically it's the same format. You can go back and cancel it. And that is how the public uses this particular interface. For the City Commission, though, and the staff and other board members, we have access to a little bit more. So what you'll do is you'll go to your bookmark. I've got to type it in on this computer. And you will use an interface known as Board Web. So you log in. Watch watch my password not work. I've been having problems with passwords today. Smaller keys. Okay, so this is one particular layout that you have. This is known as the tablet layout. So instead of actually having to click on the agenda, you have these items that are in green. This means that what this indicates is that we actually have the ability for you to look at the staff summary. So if we wanted to look at this Novus agenda training, we would simply click on this. It provides you the summary, but then what you can also do is add notes. So you just simply click on notes, you type in a note, and then you just simply hit save and exit. So what this means now is that later on, if you want to make a note about a particular ordinance or something that was said, you can easily go back to this meeting later and see what those notes actually have. And that is part of your account. If you don't particularly like this format here, you can simply go up here into the upper right-hand corner where it says agenda, and it will pull up the agenda. It makes it a little bit more difficult. You can still click on these in order to bring up the board view of the documents and also your notes. To be honest, this is just going to take simply using the software. In the future, we intend to roll out, if the commission has specific items that they would like push forward to an agenda, we can show you how you can create those documents, but staff are always more than happy to get that work done. So this is where we're going from now on. The minutes will actually, Brianna's actually recording those minutes now. As far as how you view those minutes and approve them, we'll show you how that gets run through during the next commission meeting, because this will be our first set of minutes generated using the new software. Are there any questions over the new material?
Commissioners have any questions?
It just sounds like, it looks like it's more user-friendly.
It is. I think it's a lot more intuitive than the Dropbox method that we were using. And I think it's time saving. For instance, if, like our audit, it was, I think 182 pages or something like that. In the Dropbox, we had to create that separate folder, or else you have to scroll through all 182 pages to get to the next agenda item. So, and it makes our job a lot easier as far as compiling it. We can route it to different departments to get different information, in addition to just the minutes and the preparation on that. It's really taking things up to the next level.
James, the only question I had, and this is an overall question, on our software overall in the city of Lovington, how well is it protected from any type of hacking or something?
Well, we're going to a hosted solution, and so those, for instance, with this, we have the ability to change passwords, and all of our protections are done through the proprietary software. So with our financial software, that is locked down very tight. Even if someone were able to, let's say, hack in through the web interface, they wouldn't be able to do anything to our finances. In order to access the core programming, you actually have to have the software installed on your particular computer. So as far as hacking in, I'm very confident in the security protocols we have internally, and also that our software vendors have supplied us.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
So you said we're supposed to leave these here?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll never learn it, because how can I?
You can actually, sir, with that iPad, you can use the software the same way on your iPad. It's just, instead of a keyboard, it will be touchscreen. We went with this because, frankly, the Chromebooks are a lot cheaper, and the only board, actually, the City Commission is the only body that we have that actually has access to those. In order to accommodate our other boards and commissions like planning and zoning, lodgers tax, that's why we're leaving these computers here. But you can actually access it. You still have your iPad. You can access this software through the same means. Yes, sir.
Can me and Art get a
yes, sir.
course for
yes, sir.
less fortunate people?
Any questions? Yes, we'll be more than happy to sit down. It'll be a lot.
I need that course with you guys too.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I
guess we need to make sure we log out.
Actually, whenever you power down, or even if you close it, in order to log back in, it requires your username and password again.
All right, very good.
At the next meeting, you may see a couple of other user accounts on there, but they won't have access to yours unless you give out that password.
Commissioner Gann?
Can we change my password?
Yes.
So I can remember it and, yeah. I'm trying to get the class set. So 3 people in a class, that's the minimum you have? It looks like we got 3.
We can only do 2 at a time due to open meetings requirements. So,
You're by yourself.
I'm alone there.
all right. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
No?
Okay.
Thank you for that, James.
Yes,
Thank you, James. Okay, moving on to resolution, I'm sorry, canvassing 2018 municipal election results. Anna?
No. Oh, try to get it on. There you go. Now we're having the IT problems, aren't we?
Thank you, sir.
So first, I'd like to thank our precinct workers. I don't know if y'all knew who they were, but they did a great job. We had no issues. Then the county, of course, because they assisted us so well with everything that we needed. As far as the votes go, we had absentee voters. We had 1. For early voters, we had a total of 97. And that election day, we had a total of 293. As far as if you wanted to know how many registered voters we had 4,919 registered voters. So, do you have any other questions?
I do. Out of the registered voters, what percentage came to vote? Do you know? Do you have that information?
I do not. I would assume it'd probably be about 5 to 2%.
I'm sorry?
10%? 5?
Don't go that high.
Sorry. Did not calculate that.
Okay.
It's probably less than 1%.
Yeah.
Because it's 4,000.
Yeah, 4,000.
400 would be.
Yeah.
That'd be
About
10%,
0.5%.
right there, 10%, so it's pretty much looking. Maybe any other?
4,000 altogether in the city?
4,919 were registered
5,000,
voters.
yeah. And only we had a total, what, 200?
About 300.
300, so yeah, less than.
That's less than 5%.
3,
Yeah,
yes.
0.5%.
It's a 0.5%.
It's probably 0.426%.
Sorry, sir.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Any commissioners for discussing?
No. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Off-highway vehicle use discussion, James?
Mayor and Commissioners, as you had requested at our last meeting, we were given direction to go ahead and get some statistics and perform a poll. So one of the things that city staff did was we did create a Facebook poll through our city Facebook page. It was open for 7 days. Received a total of 371 total votes. And the question was, after explaining the change in state law and what the ordinance would do to allow off-highway vehicles on paved city streets, 68% of those who did look at the poll, they did vote to or did say that they would support it. There was lots of commentary on there. I do have to hand it to Mr. Dunlap. He did his due diligence and tried to respond to every one of those comments and find out those who did vote or cast a no vote answer their questions. And the majority of folks were concerned about enforcement, and they were concerned about reckless behavior from operation of not only these type of vehicles, but any vehicle on city streets. So we did look up safety statistics on this particular issue, and one data set came from the Concerned Families for ATV Safety. So what this said was during this period, January 1st through August 31st of 2015, there were 357 deaths related to off-highway vehicle use incidents. Now, this includes everything from an ATV, which is a quad or a 3-liter, to a off-highway vehicle, which is the ROV, UTVs, or your utility-type vehicles, and then they had some unknowns in there. So as far as the location, though, the majority of ATV incidents occurred on the road. According to this with your ROV, they're saying that all 50 of them occurred on road, but the majority of them were off road. As far as related deaths, the majority of the time it was due to the driver, or the driver was actually the fatal or fatality in that particular incident. And copies of these slides are actually part of the agenda packet. As far as the age range, of course, we see the majority of these were individuals who are under 15. I would like to note that if this does proceed forward, you would probably not, I would hope not to see any type of injury data from anybody under the licensed age on our city streets. Now, and this is not a surprising statistic, it appears that all 50 of the fatalities from off-highway vehicle use on those paved roads were due to the fact that the individual was not wearing a seatbelt. So these accident and injury statistics actually would probably, I would be confident in saying that they do mimic those of your traditional motor vehicle or even that of a motorcycle from helmet use. So could these have been prevented? Possibly, without actually looking at the accident reports, we wouldn't be able to determine that. We also looked at the Consumer Product Safety Commission. This data is a little bit older, but I feel a little bit more confidence in this. Even though it is older, it's vetted a little bit better. But between January of 03 to December 31st of 2011, they actually said that there were 428 off-highway vehicle incidents, and these ROVs are the type of vehicles that we're saying. In that 10-year span, 231 fatalities, 388 injuries, of which 19% were classified as severe. And it appears that the tracking from January 12 to April 5th, it's about average for that previous 10-year span. So when we look at the 2003 to 11 data, there were 224 of the incidents actually involved at least one death. So we see 218 of those were a single fatality. 5 of the incidents experienced 2 fatalities, and there was 1 incident in which there was 3 fatalities. So whenever you look at the data, though, the 65% of those fatalities occurred on an unpaved surface, where the minority occurred on a paved surface. So this is that is what we've determined by doing the research, and I'm not sure if Mr. Dunlap has anything he would like to add to this, but at this point we would need obviously discussion about this issue and any particular direction you would like staff to proceed with.
James, I am in favor of it, but I'm in favor of a time frame as well, and also very stiff penalties if anybody violates what we put forward. That's if the vote is in favor of it. Since it'd be a new item, if it goes to vote and is approved, since it is a new item that we put, I would like to see something like in the range of $250 fine for any type of violation. I figure if we hammer them hard in the beginning, they'll tend to go with the rules and regs. If the penalty is very slim and rare, $10 fine, $25, they're going to keep doing it. So I feel that if the board does agree and does pass it, I would be highly in favor of at least a minimum of $250 penalty on any violation. Any questions from commissioners?
I would like to hear from the chief, if you don't mind, Chief. What's your opinion on this? Your honest and frank opinion.
Well, to me, those vehicles are meant for the off-highway, not in the roadways themselves. As it is, we're having to deal with the other issues, and now we're going to be involved in off-highway vehicles. And you've seen the stats for the seat belts. We can't get them to wear them on the cars, unless on the ATVs. So either way around, we'll work around it, but my opinion would be no.
Commissioner Gay?
I'm with the chief. Even though I'm an avid motocross rider, and I love this stuff, absolutely. I grew up in Tatum, and I've been guilty of riding inside the city limits. I have a ticket to prove it. So I feel that everyone should have that same opportunity to receive the same ticket for riding off-road vehicles in the community. So I stand against it. You know, I see no benefit to anything in town. You know, you're skating down the back streets or alleyways. There's going to be, you'll have typical people that obey the law and use it wisely, but you know, you're going to have more complaints on the opposite side. So I just really can't. I'm not for it at all.
I agree with Scott.
And I'm not really for it either, because they're really lower, and I know they have that flag, you know, that stands up above that you can see, but normally the typical, as he stated, Commissioner Gandy did, about, you know, the alleyways, stuff like that, kids are going to be kids and grown-ups too as far as riding them. I'm just against having off-road vehicles on our streets. They need to stay in the pasture, as you want to call it, or sand dunes. That's just my personal opinion, and I'll let you go with that.
Do you want to add something? I'll give you 3 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Precinct Terrell Dunlap, met you guys last time. I'm a big avid supporter of anything off-road. Like I mentioned before, I mean, I race, and I race quite a bit, but I do it off-road. Like I said, I also have a muscle car too that I can drive as fast as I want wherever I want to go, but I don't get tickets for it, and I don't do it on the street. You know, there's a place and time and a place for it. Besides the, as far as not seeing a benefit to it, I am aware that there's possibly a little more than half a dozen vehicles that are registered to the city that the city actually uses, and have personally seen places where they have been on the streets. You know, not saying I saw them driving, you know, to Hobbs or anything like that. I'm saying in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, possibly coming from either the city park to the city hall here or police station, just around town in general. First off, the biggest beneficiary to it is probably going to be the city, because of allowing those vehicles to drive short distances in town. What it's going to do is it'd save you on your fuel, your maintenance, and stuff on your full-size trucks. Instead of buying a couple trucks every year, you could basically get one for a third of what it would cost. You're looking at 3 vehicles for 1 truck. You know, your fuel cost is going to be less. Like I said, I personally, the thing is that the state has allowed us, the state has said that it's okay, and has allowed us to do it as long as the city creates an ordinance for it. And that's why I'm here, is because it is a state law saying that we can, and there are stipulations. You know, of course, I did speak with the game warden. The game warden is totally against anything other than what is classified as a UTV, which would be more similar to like a Jeep, a smaller Jeep. It's what I drive. As far as ATVs, quads, dirt bikes, stuff like that, that is an absolute no. You know, the game warden had mentioned to me that he is not for that. But if you restricted the laws and the ordinance to only allow the certain type of vehicles, let's say like as Roswell and Clovis have, then now you're talking about a vehicle that comes equipped with seat belts, comes equipped with a seat and a steering wheel, and you do not straddle the actual seat. There is a big difference between those and the other ones. You know, 7-8 years ago, a lot of these vehicles were not manufactured with functioning doors on the sides anyways. So, I mean, I'm not saying that the crash data is incorrect. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it. But if you look back at it, it's the same thing as airbags. That was one thing that was brought up on the Facebook page as well. Well, how many airbags are these vehicles going to have if you were in an accident? Well, the answer is the exact same amount of airbags as what was required on any car manufactured before September 2nd, 1998. Because airbags were not required until then. And that's when it was. Side impact airbags were not required until 2013, that legislation went in effect, and it gave them 4 years to comply. So now you're talking about a lot of different safety things that we are actually used to that actually is fairly new. You're talking only 20 years total for airbags. So I could get in my 1967 Super Sport Chevelle, and I don't have any airbags. And that vehicle was actually not even required to come with seatbelts, but it does have them. Now, a difference having tinted windows, you know, Chief Rodriguez over here can't see a seatbelt. You got maybe guess, sometime whatever they do to figure it out, that's how they do it. But in a UTV, you can see that any day. Anyone can see it. You can see it at all times because you don't have any tinted, you're not enclosed. I mean, yeah, it's open air. No difference than say a street bike. You know, a street bike can run 120 miles an hour, can run 140 miles an hour right down Main Street if they wanted to. But are they going to do it? You don't know. I mean, basically your argument here is basically going to be the same thing as, I mean, it's a completely separate argument, but it would be the same thing as gun control. You know?
Yeah, Mr.
You know,
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's just going to be there or it's not. I don't have to represent, I'm not required to show a need to express a right, just as anything else. That's the only reason why I'm here, is because the state has allowed it. I'm just trying to get you guys to allow it. I mean, nobody has pulled me over driving on the street because I don't. And I can't speak for everyone, but I do speak for most responsible ones.
Do they allow that on state highways?
On state highways, limited access highways, no.
Crossing it, that's all.
You can cross it and you can be on the side as far as the medians.
My UTV will run 60 miles an hour, but you won't let me on the highway. So what's the difference?
Well, I don't need to run.
in my community.
Exactly. I mean, like I mentioned in the previous meeting, am I going to have fun driving mine at 30 miles an hour in town? No, absolutely not. I will do that at another time. But it's just a luxury. It's like I said, you don't need to own a rifle, but you do. It's there.
Any other discussion?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
You talk about not having a need, and that was my question. Is there a need to have these vehicles on city roadways?
No, sir. There is absolutely no need. Like I said, it's the same argument as gun control. In a free country, you are not required to express a need or show a need when you're expressing a right.
But you're not going to shoot a rifle in town just for shooting.
I'm sorry, what?
You're not going to shoot a rifle in town just for shooting, you know?
No.
You can buy a rifle, but you're not going to be shooting.
Exactly. It'd be the same thing as if we were trying to do a city ordinance right now to outlaw the sales of guns within the city limits. It's a state law that says you can, but that's kind of where your argument comes from. It just, yeah, I mean, it may not be a need for you, and it's not a need for me either. But it is something that the state has allowed us to do.
Commissioner Campos had something.
In responding to your point about a need, being a retired law enforcement officer, I do see a need in having a gun. So there's a difference there. Also, we live in a neighborhood where we have sometimes ATVs, four-wheelers, zooming through our neighborhood and causing a lot of noise because of how they ride. How would you address that if this were to pass?
As far as that goes, I mean, I'm not in law enforcement. I mean, I would love to.
I'm just talking about regular citizens.
If I knew who it was, I would tell them. I would personally, because now you're trying to take something away from me. Like you said, it is the same thing. Yeah, you see the need of the gun. You know, if they're trying to take it away from Mr. Gandy over here, then that's trying to take it away from you too, because we all have to abide by the same rules. We all have to abide by the same laws.
Let's keep to the subject, please.
In the closing, my concern is, I'm going to side with the chief. I've been to many accidents. I've seen what happens when two vehicles collide and crash. I've investigated many fatalities. So my concern is putting another vehicle at risk on public roadways. This is a small community, a lot of elderly drivers, a lot of young drivers who are texting a lot of the times or doing something else where they're not really engaged in what they're doing. So to me, it just raises the level of possibility of more accidents or even more fatalities.
And that's where another concern comes from. You can't stop that. people are going to do that. Yeah, I mean, you know, my other job is, for the past 30 years, we dig graves. We do it right here in the city of Lovington. So any fatality around here that you might have investigated, we had to take care of that.
Well, I don't want to increase the graves being dug out there.
You know what I mean? I understand well. I mean, for, you know, 30 years of my 36-year-old life so far, I've been dealing with death in any way. I mean, I've been at the end of that.
We appreciate it. We appreciate your statements, Mr. Dunlap. James, and all due respect for the ones that voted, as well as Mr. Dunlap, I'd like to see it on the action item on our next meeting, and we could, that way it gives them the opportunity to lobby their commissioners to see if they would approve it or not.
Yep. Sure, Mayor. In order for us to even vote, I mean, we would have to come up with what are the criteria in the ordinance.
Okay, so if you go a little bit further in.
It would be a little bit more involved, and frankly, I don't know that we would be able to do it justice by having it on our next agenda. If we could hold that off so we can present to you a draft ordinance at the first meeting in April, that way we would have the ability to, do we want to go ahead and advertise this particular ordinance or not?
Okay, the consensus of this board thus far seems like it's against it. Patrick, if we do not give James direction this night to proceed forward, but we cannot vote on it, but if we give him direction not to proceed forward, because the board consensus seems like they're not in agreement with it, can we say that, or do we have to wait till on another? Or
well, I don't think there can be any consensus voiced from the board because we're here for discussion items only.
Okay, sir.
And so I think the safest thing to do would be to give staff an opportunity to at least try to put something together as a draft. There could be a lot of things that each council person takes into consideration between now and that particular point, whether it's the 1st of April, first meeting in April, or the 2nd. But I think that's the cleanest way to do it.
Okay.
At a minimum, we could take a look at what the state has as far as its requirements and present that, so we're not, you know, creating something entirely new. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Patrick.
You're welcome.
James, if you proceed forward on that.
We have to, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
And if I might add one thing too, I mean, I'm pretty knowledgeable as far as the laws with the OHVs go. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a shout. I'll tell you. I mean, and I'll tell you pretty much word for word what the state law is. You know, no one under the age of 18, regardless if they have a driver's license, is going to be able to have any passengers in the vehicle on or off road. You're talking about a vehicle coming in with less restriction or more restrictions and less paved highways to ride, to less places to ride on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward, 2018 Hold Harmless Bond Series and Vehicle Acquisition Discussion.
Sir. Mayor and Commissioners, so if you recall, back in 2014, we adopted Ordinance 528. What Ordinance 528 did was enact a 3/8% gross receipts tax, known as the Hold Harmless tax. And the intent of this was, due to state legislative action, they were going to remove the hold harmless distribution to cities, which was enacted, I believe, back in 2005, which removed the food and medical good tax throughout the state of New Mexico. To offset the losses to communities, the state was granting a hold harmless distribution so it wouldn't have any effect on our gross receipts or our city revenue. This is about a little over $400,000 a year. What they had enacted back in 2014 was to gradually phase this out over the next 16 years. However, they did allow each municipality to elect to enact that 3/8% gross receipts tax to offset this. After doing staff analysis on this, the commission did approve this tax increase. However, there's some limitations on it. The limitations of what the proceeds of the 3/8 tax can be used is we called it unofficially the tangible tax. It could only be for those large items that are identified on our ICIP. In addition, there is a percentage, like I believe this fiscal year, it's 30% of the estimated hold harmless distribution, of which 18% goes to the general fund to offset the drawdown by the state. So, however, what we did was we enacted Ordinance 534. This enacted a $3.5 million hold harmless gross receipts tax revenue bond. Well, what this bond has allowed us to do is fund projects like the complete renovation of Chaparral Park's irrigation system, the playground equipment out there, the splash pad, 17th Street project, our disc golf course, and also the remodel of our Love Street restrooms. We have a couple of immediate needs, and I was asked by a couple of commissioners to look into this. As you know, last year we were granted $200,000 to plan and design the what we call the North 17th Fire Station. This has been a project that's been on the city's books since the early 80s. We did receive state legislative appropriation to do this, and the planning and design is complete. And frankly, I was asked, when are we going to build it? My immediate response was, we have to find the money for it because it is a rather large project. So what this project does, though, is it does conform to our comprehensive plan in terms of growth, especially residential development. Residential development is projected over the next several decades to move to the north and the west of Lovington, and this fire station is right there on the northwest side. The proposed site is actually, if Dogwood were to intersect with 17th Street, it would actually be on that plat of land there. In addition, we do have a growing call volume for fire and EMS. Just to show you, since 2013, our fire call volume has increased by about 5.5% a year. EMS a little over 7.5% per year. This year, they're projected to hit about 2,600 calls for ambulance. With fire, it really depends on the type of season that you have, but this includes all fire responses. It usually stays between 250 to 275 fire calls. However, whenever you project out over the next couple of years, and even we're averaging about a 7.15% increase in calls combined out to 2032, and if you even throw out the high numbers, it's about a 5.72% increase each year. If population projections continue, or population growth and call volume continues to progress, we're looking at probably having between 7,500 to about 6,200 to 7,500 runs each year just by our fire and EMS department. We do have a second immediate need. Back in 2005, when the city underwent its ISO rating evaluation, it was determined at that time we had to absolutely have a aerial fire truck. Prior to that, we had what was it was called it was a Crown. It's a 1953 model, 65-foot elevated platform that we inherited from the Clovis Fire Department. That unit in 2005 actually got downed. Simply put, they didn't have the parts to repair it anymore. Several years after that, after it was determined that we had to have that aerial apparatus, it was simply due to the fact that the number of buildings in Lovington that exceeded 35 feet in height, once we exceeded 5 of those buildings, we automatically had to have an aerial apparatus. And at that point, we already had in excess of 5. We've had many more buildings built that really we have to have this unit. We do have still in our possession a 1983 Pierce aerial apparatus. However, that unit is out of service and it doesn't comply with current safety standards. Chief Lizardo did have the manufacturer come in and evaluate the truck to see what it would take to repair it and bring it into compliance. And frankly, they told us that it would not be worth the investment in this vehicle. It's still, regardless of the estimated $400,000 for this truck, it still wouldn't meet all of our safety requirements, and that truck has already exceeded its useful service life. So we are required to have that particular unit for ISO rating. It affects 2 things. Your ISO rating right now, the fire department is a class 4, which we did improve as a city, but Your ISO rating determines the amount of money or your premiums for not only residential but a bigger impact on commercial property owners' insurance rates. In addition to that, it affects our state fire marshal office funding. Each year, the fire department receives a certain amount of money based on its ISO rating. So, these are some big projects, and Chief Lizardo and Gary have sat down and figured out how can we fund these, and I wanted to have this discussion tonight with the City Commission so we could proceed forward with this. So how would we fund this fire station? Well, first of all, as I said, this is a shovel-ready project. The planning and design is done. We do have some artist or engineer depictions of what the station would look like. It is value engineered, no frills. It would be essentially a brick building, cinder block brick building. This would be the street side facing. This is actually one of the side entrances. There is room for public to visit the station. Zero scaping on the landscaping because we do want to conserve water. This is what the back side of the facility would look like. It would have pass-through bays. Kind of looking at it from a bird's eye view, this side of the structure is actually facing 17th Street. This side would be for staff parking and also the drive-through apron for fire apparatus and ambulance. This station would be staffed with fire apparatus, an ambulance, as well as a grass unit, and anything else that the chief would deem as appropriate. In the back, planning for the future, we still have enough room on that property for the planned additional water tower that will service the north side of town and increase water availability. Inside the station, of course, very bare bones. Those hoses are actually an exhaust system for the apparatus to cut down on the amount of carcinogens that may be present. And then, of course, staff living quarters. This station is actually designed for 6 people. I'm going to get into potential staffing of this station a little bit later. However, it is built to accommodate six individuals on duty. The current station that we have, really whenever you look at it, it looks like it was only built for 4 individuals. And that's just really if you look at the locker room facilities. Whenever I was fire chief, we did increase staffing to 6 folks over there, and it was very tight. Chief Lizardo now has 7 people, and it's very, very crowded, especially when you have 7 adult men on one shift and they have to all share the same commode and a urinal. Very small facility. So looking at the engineer's estimates based on the square footage, value engineering, and I know Chief has already looked at some other things you could potentially cut. However, they really don't draw down on that cost, but we're looking at about an estimate of $3.2 million, which the hold harmless bond would cover that, because the hold harmless bond would be sold for $3.5 million. That would still leave additional funding left over to fund other projects listed on the city's ICIP. So additional park improvements. We could have, I know we've had some other improvements suggested at different departments that actually coincide with not only the ICIP but the comprehensive plan. We had our financial advisors, George K. Baum, actually do some analysis on this. And first of all, they looked at our debt profile. If you look at, and this is a little difficult to read on the screen, however, our 2015 debt series or bond series, we are actually doing our 3rd payment on this. The first 2 payments were designed to be very high to pay down on that interest and on that principal. So that way it would allow us the capacity to issue another bond. We didn't issue another bond in this present fiscal year because of the local economy, and we didn't really have the confidence that we would be able to issue a bond that would provide very much funding, and yet it would tie us up for the next 15 years. But you can see that our debt service on the 2015 series is just a little over $200,000 a year. Whenever you look at our gross receipts tax collections, you can see that this fund would actually support, right now, the municipal hold harmless from its inception. Of course, this was a partial year, $369,000 that first year. 2016, $888,000, almost $889,000. In 2017, we did see a decrease. Of course, there was a downturn in the economy. Year to date, we've collected over $500,000, so you can see that we can actually afford a little bit more of a debt service. The nice thing about this is the 2018 estimates, they're estimating that we're going to bring in, just from gross receipts tax, $7.8 million in gross receipts tax for our FY18. I have to say that, staff, we've worked on trying to do revenue projections, and the one thing I would like to say is that staff's projections before we even saw this document, it was only $20,000 less. So we're fairly confident that those are good, solid numbers. So what does this do? When we have to look at this bond series to finance it, one is that the 3/8 of 1%, or the hold harmless tax, would actually service the debt. This would not have an impact to our general fund. In addition to that, we would have to have some reserve built up, which we currently do. Following the schedule that they have presented, this funding would actually be available in July, barring any unforeseen circumstances. There would be several procedural things that the City Commission would have to take, in addition to basically what we did back in 2015. So our financing options, again, we can go to a public capital market. We could do a private placement in a bank. Our last bond series, we actually awarded it to Lee County State Bank because one, it was local, but also they offered us some really good terms. Or we could go through the New Mexico Finance Authority. I know that considering the discussion tonight and moving forward with this, we would definitely look at who we would place this bond issue with, but that's an action item a little bit further down the road. So what does this do for our payments? Now, instead of having a front-end loaded expensive bond payment for the first 2 years, these would actually be equalized. As you can see in 2019, projecting that we actually have a bond issued by July 1st. Our first payment will be $291, followed by $280. It would stay up above $200,000, but then you see a gradual decline, and that's because we're starting to pay off our remaining 2015 series. This also would allow us potential another issuance of an additional $3.5 million bond later on down the road. However, payments would be expended out to 2038. So what does this do? Essentially, this first column shows our gross receipts tax, our estimated projections on the hold harmless. The second phase, it shows our current debt service on the 2015 series. You can see where this debt series is with the 2018 bonds. And our total debt service would be, to begin with, would be $511,000, which this fund can support and be very helpful. So a couple of things that would have to take place, of course. Our bond counsel, this is something that we don't have to go out per procurement code. We did use Tommy Hughes the last time. Mr. Hughes did pass away shortly after our last bond series went through. But we would bring back to the commission by a resolution of an intent to apply basically for this bond series. We would go through a bid proposal, which our financial advisors would move through. Then we would actually go through an ordinance which would allow us to adopt that bond series, so on and so forth. But we're looking at probably a 2 to 3 month process in order to have this financing available for the station and other projects. The aerial apparatus, and the reason why I'm moving on to this is because this aerial apparatus component, we can either obligate ourselves over the next 15 years and take a substantial hit to our general fund, or a gradual reduction. So our aerial apparatus is about $1 million fire truck, unfortunately. That is, I actually asked the chief to look at an articulating boom like we had, and he said he had checked with a couple of vendors and it adds quite a bit to the purchase price. But you look at, we contacted the New Mexico Finance Authority to look at, can we have some debt service on this truck, and they would do it through a bond. And we, Chief and I and Gary had looked at at this and determined that even though it's a higher interest rate, it makes more sense, and this financing schedule I want to show you, to go with a 15-year. NMFA will finance these projects like this for the service life of the building or the equipment. And in this particular case, they're saying 15 years is the furthest that they can move out with this. So, if it will advance. Thank you. All right. I'm going to walk you through this. Assuming, say for instance, we do not move forward with the $3.5 million hold harmless deal and do not build the fire station, we would be looking at incurring a general fund obligation for the next 15 years of almost $90,000. Okay? Assuming that we do proceed with the fire station construction, it does a couple of things. One, the annual debt service for this particular truck is going to be around $90,000 a year. Each year right now, and this schedule assumes that there is no improvement in the ISO rating, which I seriously doubt. I bet the fire department will improve. Right now, we're receiving $84,000 a year roughly from the State Fire Protection Fund. What we are allowed to obligate towards debt service to purchase an apparatus is $33,000 per year, based on our current single station funding. And how they determine the amount of money that you get is by your ISO rating and then the number of main stations or substations that you have in your community. We only have one fire station here. It's classified as a main station. So $33,000, if you remember back in 1994, the city actually utilized the maximum amount of its state fire protection funds to service the debt to purchase a fire truck. The rest of it was purchased through, I believe, a general fund allocation. So what does this do? If you look, we can obligate $33,000 towards the debt service on the fire truck. We would have to make up for about $56,000 of, almost $57,000 of it through a general fund allocation. But we do have to offset the loss to the State Fire Protection Fund of $33,000. The State Fire Protection Fund can be used for operating expenses except for salary and benefits. And we can't use it for water system improvements either. However, now the way we have it set up, we use it to pay for training, fire hose, fire equipment, utilities, different operating expenses that the fire department has. So, assuming that we build this fire station, we open it up by 2020. Sorry, I'm getting dry mouth. By 2020, and it's classified as a main fire station. We can actually have two main fire stations, and essentially what that means is that it's staffed with an officer, it has the needed fire apparatus, it has a room for training. Thank you, sir. It has room for training. In addition to what's the other? It has a phone. I'm sorry. All right, so we get that funded. So that doubles our state fire allocation. We can now obligate $66,000 towards the debt service on the truck. What this does is it reduces our general fund obligation down to service the debt to $23,800. So, but what this does though is it gives us $18,000 more to fund fire department operations, except for salary and benefits. So what does this do to the general fund though? Well, granted, there's only a $1,000 increase, but if you recall the site of the old Holiday swimming pool, once it was filled in, it was turned into the recreation yard. What we did was we moved recreation down to the old water department facility, and that facility, the old Holiday swimming pool, is the site of the fire department's training ground and administration building. Now, the State Fire Protection Fund does not pay for a training facility. However, they do provide funding for an administrative building, which is funded at the same level as the main fire station. So what does this do? We actually obligated about $65,000 towards the rehab renovation of the building. That's just an estimate. It does need some plumbing and electrical work, but we've got a sound structure out there. So what does this do? The next year, we now are funded basically at the level of 3 fire stations. It provides us $250,000 in state fire protection funds that can be used for the operation of the fire department. We can now fully 100% meet the debt service obligation with $78,000 left over. So 2 things. You notice that it reduced, we would actually be able to reduce all of the operational expenditures of the fire department from the general fund with the exception of salary and benefits. However, eventually by 3 years from now, we are going to need additional staff, and what this personnel cost indicates is just hiring 3 more firefighters, going to an 8-person shift. Right now, with current staffing levels, Chief said we could get away with staffing either 4 downtown and 3 out there, or vice versa. However, with this, you would increase staffing to 4 at each station. You would need it. We'd have an impact of $125,000 to the general fund. The last thing, though, is what to do with this. I wouldn't call it extra money because we need the money to fund the fire department. However, with that amount there, we could actually get permission from the state fire marshal's office to do carryover. In 4 years, we could actually replace a Class A humper, which is actually needed at the fire department. So you're looking at additional fire fund money through 2034, anticipating that they don't have an improvement in their ISO rating of over $1.1 million, which can equip our fire department exceedingly well. Are there any questions?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
James, initially you mentioned our reserve fund. Do you envision any of this forcing us to dip into that?
No, no, sir. Right now, just looking at the initial reserves that we have, we're anticipating that we're going to end this fiscal year with about a 34% reserve.
Okay.
So, including these additional expenditures, it may decrease that 34%, but I believe we are allowed to get down to 20. We want to avoid that, but we should not have to dip into that below a 20% reserve.
I guess my question is, are you envisioning that we might?
No, sir, I do not anticipate that happening. No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay. I want to thank you,
yes, sir,
James, for putting this together for us. My understanding is it's going to be about a 3-year tight schedule with this due to funding and so forth. And I know James had the pleasure of him going over it with me last week. And I envision this with Lovington, as well as one thing about calculated decisions and calculated risk. That's the only way you move forward. If you're just going to be stagnant and just think everything's a risk and let's not move forward, I think that's what's always holding everybody back. So I look at this as a good calculated risk for Lovington, growing Lovington and so forth, and accommodating our citizens with a good calculated risk. So I definitely am for it, and I appreciate you putting this together.
Yes, sir. Well, if I may, Mayor and Commission, one of the things I did fail to mention in regards to the truck, we do have no choice but to proceed with the financing of the truck. We are potentially putting the taxpayer at an increased out-of-pocket cost, but also reducing if we got downgraded a level from our ISO distribution. But another thing to remember is this $1 million fire truck. The state of New Mexico, and the governor did sign this into law. The state of New Mexico gave us $50,000 towards this project that we have to use in the next 3 years. So are we going to incur in the next fiscal year that large debt service obligation? No, because reality is before we could even proceed with procurement of this truck, plus it will take a little bit of time to get the financing through NMFA, we're probably looking at January before we get what's called a notice of obligation from the state to utilize that $50,000. We are then looking at another 8 to 9 month build time for the fire truck. So reality is we may be in a better position and have less of an impact to the general fund, especially if that fire station is opened up before the delivery and payment for the apparatus. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'd like to conclude also on this is that the past 5 years with the city is moving in a different direction. We've been taking a lot of risk and so forth, and moving, restructuring the way we do business and so forth, and the way we service our community. And it is paying off. If you notice the roads being fixed now, you got more street repairs, you got more housing development and so forth here within the community. This board is still continue to, I envision, it's a good, strong board. good diverse board, and it is making good decisions for the community. And I see this as well as another project. Also, there's more projects to come on. There is more projects out there that we'll be looking at as well in the coming years. And it's for the betterment of our community, and I'm excited to see them happening, especially during this time period, and I appreciate it, James.
Yes, sir.
We'll go ahead and move forward to employee council carry permits, concealed carry permits discussion.
Yes, sir. Mayor and Commissioners,
we did get a widescreen on this.
I know. Well, Mayor and Commissioners, we've been asked by, in light of the events that have occurred over the past 2 years, I know that we've received numerous requests from our personnel on whether or not they're allowed to exercise their constitutional right to carry a firearm, mainly concealed carry. As you know, New Mexico is an open carry state, but you must have the permit and license in order to conceal carry. After discussions with the city attorney, we thought it best just to have a discussion and kind of get your feelings on this, because right now, as it stands, our personnel code, the way that we interpret this is that you're not allowed to bring an unauthorized weapon onto city property. So that would include the use of a concealed carry permit. However, across New Mexico, we have other municipalities who have done things to allow their employees to do this. On October 13th of 2017, the Roswell City Council adopted a resolution that allows their employees to conceal carry while at work. Now, granted, they do have to obtain the permission from city management in order to do this. However, they had previously allowed the police and fire departments to conceal carry while at work. And we also look at Otero County. They adopted an ordinance in 2016, Eddy County in 2016. Right now, the village of Ruidoso is, they've given their city manager direction to present a policy to city commission by April. I'm sorry, or of May. Some of the things that first come up is, the liability concerns and safety concerns. I did attach to your packets, it was kind of a HR and municipal law overview of some different things to consider. Right now, there's no federal or state law that regulates weapons at work. Was one consideration that you have, unless it's a workplace policy. OSHA, they say that yes, granted, there is no federal law that establishes our duty to prevent workplace violence. However, we do have to provide a safe working environment. Workers' compensation, of course, is governed by law, and typically employees can receive compensation benefits from injuries received in the course of their employment, and they're saying that a gun-related incident may be eligible for those benefits. Negligence claims, we may face, we could potentially face some negligence claims from a third-party victim. An example is if we have somebody who has a propensity for violence and they injure somebody, we could look at possibly negligent supervision, hiring, or retention. So those are a couple of things to consider with this, but also the vicarious. It's not really, if you act violently, that's not within the scope of your normal duties. So really, depending on the facts, we could be liable, but typically if somebody, they go to the grocery store on their lunch break and then they shoot somebody, that is outside the scope of their normal duties. So we have a little bit of protection. So really, as far as some municipal and county policies, all of them really here in New Mexico have pointed to the same thing. They have to have a valid concealed carry permit recognized by the state of New Mexico. And also, management has to be informed and approve the individual employee. So I know that staff, we've gone back and forth on this particular issue, but we would like to really have this discussion with the City Commission as far as their thoughts and feelings. In order to allow this, this would take the modification of our personnel ordinance.
Anybody want?
I don't think we need it here at the city. I'm just going to say, I think we're pretty round, diverse. I think the department's got all that covered. If somebody's going to come in and shoot up the place, you're not going to stop them anyway. It's just, you have an irate customer sometimes, and then the employee tends to get, it starts boiling. We don't need that. I don't think we facility inside City Hall, vehicles, or none of that stuff. I just don't think we need it here.
Commissioner Sanchez?
Yeah, I'd like to have a weapon.
He wants a weapon now.
Yeah, you know, I want to be safe and look at all that's happening all over the river. Of course, I'd be dangerous with a weapon because I don't know how to use one, but that's why I'm going to learn. So I got the chief to teach me how, maybe.
Chief said no.
So anyway, to me, it just depends on who's using it. The employee, really. Like you were saying, right? There may be some disgruntled employees that you may not let them off for some reason and they get mad or whatever. And they'll make a ruckus or whatever. So, but personally, what if I got a weapon? If I got a permit, a valid permit, you know, went through the 2-day course or whatever they require, could I carry a weapon coming in here?
Go ahead.
Technically, our mayor commissioners, technically, you're not a city employee, so yes. Matter of fact, somebody in the audience could be carrying one right now and have no control over that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but, well, I know the chief's carrying. But
that's a given.
Security.
But, you know, well, I totally lost my train of thought there. But the only places where you can't carry that is if they sell liquor or if it's on school grounds. Or if you actually have it posted. But technically, sir, to answer your question, you could actually carry a weapon if you were permitted.
Mr. Campos?
A couple of things, James. We're talking about two different things here. We're talking about the public being able to carry a weapon, and of course we know where we're out there. But now we're talking about citizens having the opportunity to carry a weapon, and that weighs on my mind. Number one, how are you going to select which employee is able to carry a weapon or not? And number two, are you going to require any extra training, any documentation on qualifications, monthly qualifications, and so forth, in order for that person to be able to make the right decision when they're encountered with deadly force? I know that's a mouthful. I'm just curious.
Yes, no, Mayor and Commissioners, I understand your question, and I've thought of that, but then I also think of it on the flip side. They would, essentially the employees would go through the same training as the citizen who's able to carry it. And we have no control over that. So I don't know of any additional, I mean, that's something worth to explore as far as criteria, what employees could actually carry. That's something else to determine.
I guess my question is, how are you going to say, why you can carry a gun, but I know you can't? How are you going to determine that?
Damn, scary.
Okay.
No, that's a good question. I do not have the answer for that right now.
Okay. All right.
Commissioner Gandy?
I'm trying to give it some thought. So, you know, our employees are no different than citizens. You know, you're going to have employees that want to carry because they feel that that's their right, and you're going to have employees that don't want anything to do with it. You know, I don't carry. I don't even own a gun, I don't think. But it doesn't matter. I don't have a problem with guns. It's just a choice I've made. So, you know, I have no problems if that's what they want to do, and they have the training and documentation to pull it up. Like you said, in that deadly force, who knows? I mean, it's even been shown that even officers who have training don't always react in a manner in which you think they should. And the one person you wouldn't think would be able to fend off is the one person that stands up. You know? So, you know, but you know, it's that moot point. You know, there's a lot of tension in today's society. There's comfort to some people with having that. You know, there's comfort in knowing that somebody does carry. You know, so I have no problem sitting right here, knowing he carries, and I can grab it from him if he's slow.
So you knock you down. So you see him shoot? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. So, but I have no problem with it. Let me just put it that way. If that's the choice of one of our employees, and like we have, he has the training and documentation to say he has that, I have no problem with it. You know, so.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chief, David, do you have any thoughts?
Lots.
Tell us.
Oh, about this? Oh, not really. No. Me and James have discussed it quite a bit on it. Like I mentioned to James, my only concern is, yes, if you do allow it in the buildings and we do have something that happens, and heaven forbid that the employee has to do something to take somebody's life, we go in, what are we going to have in place to know that he's actually an employee and he's allowed to have it, or somebody's not? What are we going to have in place for somebody not to get hurt on the flip side of that?
What if the employee has a bad day?
Correct.
Good. Thank you, Chief.
One thing on my thought on it would be us pursuing a workplace violence prevention program, which we do most likely have in place, but a stiffer one to where no one has easy access to, and I've seen how we've made the doors code, where you have to get a code to go in Anna's office and the water department. But sometimes a workplace violence prevention program, being a little bit stiffer on that, would be preventing a lot. For instance, if they walk through them front doors where they don't have easy access to the city manager's office, where they don't have easy access to the back, and so forth. If anybody's seen a workplace violence program in place, and it's all approved by OSHA, a lot of oil field companies, you walk inside their office, you're no longer greeted by a secretary no more. You're greeted in a cubicle with a phone, and you're thinking, man, they don't even have a secretary here no more. Well, it's a workplace violence prevention program they have in place. So when you walk in, you see a glass window, tinted window, and a phone right there. Either you could talk to the person on the other side, but you cannot see them. You have a phone right there where you'll dial the extension, whoever you're there to see. That's a workplace violence prevention program, and it works. I think here at the City Hall, someone can easily walk to the back door, walk inside James' office, walk to the back, most likely have access to the water department and so forth. Normally, if a workplace violence prevention program, we had a little bit stiffer, most likely a person that walks to that front door probably won't be able to see pretty much the clerk, as for instance. And they could be still greeted by the clerk, but she would also be protected where nobody couldn't jump over the counter and take her as hostage or anything like that. There is programs in place, and I would prefer us to pursue preventive measure other than arming everybody, arming the employees. That's my thought. Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. Moving to action items. Can I have a motion?
I make a motion, consider resolution 2018-14, award of janitorial service contract to Clean Tech, as they've been the only ones to bid on this, and we did table it the last time, so. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Arthur Sanchez, Commissioner. All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, James.
I'm good,
I
sir.
figured.
If you want to go ahead and vote.
So nobody else submitted a bid, is that correct, James?
Mayor Commissioner, no, sir. They did not. And the only reason why we are recommending this, although we would have liked to have more qualified bidders in this particular case, we're looking at less than a 2% increase on what our costs are going to be. So this is actually a very good deal for the city.
Have you had any problems with this contractor?
No, sir, we have not.
Any other discussion?
Which buildings do they actually clean besides City Hall?
Mayor Commissioner, City Hall, the Police Department, the Library, the Senior Citizens Center, Motor Vehicle Department.
So they're taking care of all of the city?
Yes, sir.
Not the library. Shouldn't we have that included?
No, they do.
I mean,
yes, sir.
youth center, I'm sorry.
No, sir. Youth center is actually maintained by staff.
They do the judges?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. The Denton building as well. Yes, sir.
You don't think there's no way we could move that in, incorporate it to the center? That's what the employees are there?
All right, no, sir, right now, that's part of the job description of the employees, and with the hours that they have, they would not really be able to accommodate it too well.
Any other discussion? So I have a motion, Arthur second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to the second item. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for consideration of resolution 2018-16, Metropolitan Redevelopment Area designation. Sorry about
I'll
that.
second that. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? James? Go.
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, we did adopt this resolution as indicated in your packet earlier. However, as a result of the MRA meetings, we do need to make one change to the boundaries. Come on, it'll work. There we go. And it is inclusion of this particular block here, which this is East Avenue A. It would extend all the way to South Eddy Street, and it would square up these boundaries for the MRA district. Is the only change that we would be looking at. That's all I have.
Any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item number 3. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we consider resolution 218-17 access agreement between City of Lovington and Southwestern Public Service Company.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? James?
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, if you recall, we did have an agreement for SPS to extend a transmission line across our property, and in the initial terms of the agreement, we were only allowing them access off of Highway 18, as indicated on the map here. After talking with some of their field personnel, and just to expedite the whole process, they were requesting that we provide them the same opportunity afforded to Lee County Electric by access of a gate to that right-of-way down here. This would only be, access would only be granted during the construction period, and the gate would actually be installed and purchased by SPS. And then at the end of it, it would become our gate and access to the south side of our well field.
Any discussion? Any questions? So we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Moving along to item number 4. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to consider resolution 2018-18, temporary street closure block party permit for smoking on the plaza.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. James?
Mayor and Commissioners, I would like to, she doesn't know, I would like to turn this over to Mara so she can explain.
Good evening, City Commissioners and Mayor. So we're getting ready for smoking on the plaza. I am requesting this closure 2 to 3 months in advance, and the reason for that is NMDOT requires a month before the event takes place of approval, so I wanted to make sure that we were on track and not behind or anything like that. As you can see, we would be closing off Love Street, Avenue A, and Main Street. We had such a huge success with October Fiesta when we closed off Main Street. That I think it's very important that we do that again. It does bring a lot more attraction to the area. It forces people to stop and see what's going on. It would be the exact same detour as last time, except for locals, you would go on First Street instead of on Love. I am planning on adding a few more events this year, a cornhole tournament, a Little Miss Beauty pageant. We did get our JF Maddox Foundation grant as well, so we will be doing our Live on Love Street concert series with it. We will be having a beer garden, and we are going to be using some of those parking spaces. As you guys know, every year it gets bigger, and last year I had 46 contestants. They take up 20 by 40 spots, so that's the reason for the big area. I did talk to a lot of the downtown business owners. We had a business merchant meeting 2-3 weeks ago, and this was our happy median, so that we didn't interfere too much with them and that their customers will still able to park in front. It happens on a Friday, so the courthouse does need access, and part of that is going to be their handicapped access is on the central, Central, so we didn't want to close that to interfere with any of that. I don't know. I'm open for questions, I guess.
Christmas, right?
Go ahead.
Well, but how much was that, Jeff, Maddox Foundation grant?
For 20,000.
Wow, that's good.
And it is for 3 concerts, so I have to make it stretch.
Very good. Thank you.
Good job. Any other discussion, Commissioners? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? We have a motion and a second. James?
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, if you recall, at the last commission meeting, we approved our participation in the Coordinated Legislative Committee, which would bring all of our municipalities in the county together, as well as educational institutions, to focus and provide a concerted effort towards our legislative priorities at the state level. What they have requested is that we appoint 2 of our elected officials and management to serve on this particular committee. Last meeting, we or the commission decided to approve participation, but wait until reorganization in the elections to appoint these individuals. So now we just need the names of 2 of our elected officials to serve.
Anybody willing to serve on this board?
I'll serve on it if
I would too.
you know.
If it, I would like to volunteer if it would appease the commission board. I think it's a great venture as well.
Unless Commissioner Gandy wants on there.
What?
I just wanted to see that.
Why you cuss me like that?
So we had
Second.
Dear Mayor and Commission, I'm pleased to tell you that this particular check run, we only had a total of $250,147, which is lower than a lot of ours, but it's not unusual. Our single largest payment was to Waste Management Authority for $128,000. The next 2, by comparison, are P&D for $16,540 and then Dana Nepper for $16,895. A couple of items that I thought would be of interest were that on the second page of the list, under vendors, Caprock Air Conditioning and Heating, that it wasn't a large expense, but it was an unusual one because the motor vehicle department had some difficulties with their heating and air conditioning, and we needed them to come and fix that. Another item of interest was a couple pages later, and that'd be on the 4th page of the payables under Kinsey Plumbing. That's kind of new and unusual. Our youth center had an issue where their drainage from the kitchen was clogged. Well, this one said it was charged to the youth center, though.
Oh,
okay. We also had a problem with the senior center, but in this particular case, we had to have somebody come out and have them do some work at the youth center to help clear up that drainage. And that was on the 4th page. And then one last item of interest I thought was interesting was that it would be on page 6, and alphabetically, the Mountain Pacific Meter Tech Services, which was a $1,798 thing. Our Navajo plant has 3 meters that we use to meter the water that go into the plant. Apparently, 2 of them were non-functional and the other one was only partially functional, so we had to have them come out and fix the meters to make sure that we're getting a good read on all the water that we're selling to the Navajo plant. And I'm available if you have any other questions.
Any questions from the board?
In this particular case, the basic network support, we do have regular fees that we pay because we're a hosted solution. And we actually have 3 products that we're paying for related to that. But one of them is called, trying to remember the name of it, that little first thing that we click on to log in. Parallel clients. Okay. So for this parallel clients, it's a regularly scheduled maintenance thing that we pay for, and that's what the main cost here is related to that part of our network service.
How often are we paying that?
In this particular case, it has to do with connectivity issues that we've had. And so when it has a problem, we call them up and say, hey, what's the deal? And if it requires more than just some normal basic function, then they charge us for the service. And that's what's happened here in this particular case. We've had some additional charges that we were charged because we've had some connectivity issues that they had to do an upgrade on their parallel clients for us for.
So we're paying for another upgrade, basically, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
No? Okay. Okay, that was my question.
Commissioner Sanchez?
I was looking at these caution signs or whatever, Blue Book. What is that? USA Blue Book, $718.
If I may, I could turn that over to Wyatt Duncan for the answer.
Commissioner, it's actually when we put new signage in the life rings around our ponds at the wastewater treatment plant, and we actually we're putting up pedestals with the life preserver rings and everything for the safety of everyone in case something does happen with anybody out there.
Is that just a one-time thing?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Everybody in favor? So all in